So we just got done with the first ever Missional chat Twitter conversation. That was an hour of back and forth in 140 character bytes, and it just went by like that.
It flew by, and you were right. It's less than 140
Right.
characters
Once
because
you fit it
you have to
all
add
in.
that little hashtag onto the end. That was crazy. I thought maybe we had been in the conversation for like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. And it was fun. We had a bunch of people kind of jumping in and sharing comments, asking questions. Wasn't sure how that would work, how many people would actually jump on in midstream there or see it, and plan to participate. But it seemed to go well.
Yeah, no, I like that question. I thought, I think maybe it was on your blog. Someone said, do we really have to even have terminology on this? Like, does it
Right,
have to be an either or? And I kind of agree because, I've said I'm not really that into terminology,
right,
but the
right.
reason why I sort of picked on the word missional is mainly just because I've seen it so, I don't know, maybe overused or kind of hijacked
Yes,
in this last season. And so it's a good word. It's just like church. I love the word church and I love what the church is, but
right.
because of some crazy ways that it's become misperceived,
Yes.
sometimes it's not the right word.
I mean, and I totally understand where you're coming from with that. And yet I think church, Christianity, like some of these other terms have much longer histories and much more baggage. But it's almost you're right. It does seem like missional hasn't been around that long, but it's already sort of got some baggage attached to it. And to me, I think the biggest concern is probably that there isn't enough of an understanding broadly for people to distinguish it from the old paradigm understanding of missions or missionaries, and which is this, you know, like you said, very us versus them. Um, we've got God in our pocket, and we're going to go bring God to these sorry pagan people over here, wherever there is, and and missional is a paradigm shift from that, but the words are so similar that you know. Um,
Yeah, I'm kind of with you because I love, that's the part. I love that the church is turning its eyes out
right,
in the new direction. I love that part. I think that's awesome. And it's beautiful because it means that God is stirring up something. I think it's like a holy stirring or something, that kind of sitting, going to church, kind of being with a bunch of people that are just like us, all those kinds of things. I don't know, people are tired of in a good way. It's like kind of something's not quite right here.
mm,
And I think the reason why I kind of make a big deal out of it is because what I'd hate to see, and I have kind of seen it, is that we sort of then translate service
right,
as, well, we're doing what we're supposed to do for God. And then missing out this way deeper piece that I think is really important about the dignity of every human being and what we have in common. And that's why I don't like mission, because I don't want to be someone's mission.
yeah,
I really don't, but I want to be in relationship with people and learn, how to love and be loved with people, but I don't want to be someone's mission.
right,
And that's, I think, why I don't like the word.
yeah, and I think that's so important. And like we were talking about earlier, just this idea of what is the nature of the relationship. It's one thing to be in a service sort of relationship where I'm serving you versus we're friends,
Right.
and friends do things for each other, um, and that is that's part of that paradigm shift of moving away from the safety, because like you say, I mean, it really is a lot messier to, when you're in relationship with people,
Yes.
and as opposed to I'm on this side of the soup kitchen table serving you know serving you and your plate or whatever that situation is. To yeah, we're sitting together and having a conversation.
I
Uh,
think that's so true. We say sometimes um, uh, about relationship that people taught us how to read the Bible properly, how to go to church, how to learn the right things, what you needed to know. But in church, we didn't learn how to be friends, how to just be
mm,
friends. And that's not even with people who aren't like us. That's just even with people who are. Like, we haven't learned this basic thing. And if we think
right,
about Jesus, he embodied that and he modeled that
right.
and says that,
Hmm,
you're my friends.
right.
And that practice, that's kind of why, I'm always on the little bandwagon about relationship, because we have to learn how to be healthier in relationship. And it's hard. I know for me, it's really hard. It's easy for me to give. That's not that hard.
Sure.
I mean, it's not that it doesn't have a cost, but it's much harder. And in friend relationship, we all know what it feels like when someone always gives, but then never receives something back.
Mm, hmm.
And, that's cruddy in a sort of, we're all on the same whatever, have a lot in common relationship feels bad. And imagine how bad it feels when it's sort of this totally different relationship where one person's always giving and never receives anything back, never has anything to learn, never has anything to kind of take in.
Right.
That's sad.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you experimenting with this whole Twitter chat thing. It's something. It's an idea I've had for a while, and it just seemed like it's Advent. We're looking forward to Christmas and thinking about the incarnation, and so just the topic seemed like a perfect, you know, thing. And like you say, these labels, incarnational, missional, not necessarily ones we throw around on a daily basis in casual conversation, but they are ones that you use in your book, Kathy, because
You reminded me.
they can be helpful. They are helpful, but um, and so I just thought, oh, this will be fun. We'll play around with this, and um, I'll defend missional a little bit, however I can, and and we'll have a little bit of a debate, and it was good. I what I mean, Christmas is just a week away. Have have you been thinking about the incarnation, and have any nuggets of wisdom?
Well, I don't know if nuggets of wisdom, but I do love Christmas, I have to say, because I love the upside downness of the story. That's one of my favorite parts, is
Yeah.
that God comes in the form of this ordinary baby
Yep.
to ordinary parents, actually really messy parents, which is pretty ordinary. That we all have a story, we all have something going on in the background that more than meets the eye, and that it's all not what people thought. So I love that part of the Christmas story.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that a lot in my faith because I came from a tradition. I wasn't raised as a Christian, as a kid, but I was always drawn to Jesus and his ways in the little funny ways that I intersected with him. So someone gave me a Bible and I read it. I read it with kind of pure eyes because I hadn't been churched. And I was really drawn. Like, I remember that, this little white Bible. And then, kind of over time, I sort of intersected with church, kind of turned my life over to Jesus, and then, kind of followed the ways. And in that system, I think I learned this sort of worldly way of living.
Mm.
So, like, if I take the Jesus story, that somehow God would be born to these amazing parents who were like top of the heap, and that's kind of how it was, and sort of lost some of the deeper thing. And then I think in these last pretty big chunk of years of just realizing how what the world thinks is successful and good and right, the church has adopted some of those things and then missed out on kind of the paradox of the story that, kind of down is really up. And that's the upside down part of the story that I love.
I can tell you, having grown up in church, that it seems to me this is the time of year where churches love to bring out the, isn't this amazing that God would condescend to, be born so humbly, and at Christmas it gets sort of this billing, this, God becomes man, and then it's sort of like put back in the closet with the robes and the the manger, the rest of the year. That churches have not carried that theme through very well, like you say, in adopting an upwardly mobile posture. And that's what I was trying to say at the end. Like missional, we talk a lot about being contextual and incarnational, but there is the thing that you talk about and that I so appreciate is this challenge of downward mobility, of really challenging, thinking about what are we buying into, what are we buying into, and not just personally, but then in our communities of faith. What are we elevating and putting on a pedestal and saying this is normative and this is what life should be like?
I think it's really interesting because we're always fighting against our humanness and and that was the story back then, that everyone wanted a king.
Right.
They wanted a king, like that kind of king that was going to kind of rule in a really strong and powerful and tangible worldly way, really. And that kind of, for me, that's the piece. Even though I really love living this out and I keep learning a ton, the truth is I actually always look back and go, gosh, it was easier over here. It was so much easier when I really didn't have to worry so much about this much relationship that, I kind of kept myself a lot more safe and protected. And, because to me, downward mobility is not really about money. It's about this attitude of the heart. And, and I struggle with it every day. This is because and I think it's because of my humanness of just wanting things orderly, wanting things comfortable, wanting things neat and tidy. And, so I kind of think on the Christmas story, that's a big thing. Like, we like the cleaned up version.
Right.
But when you really start looking at how messy and wacky and the whole thing is politically and personally and spiritually, all those things, we get agitated kind of, because it's so complicated.
Right.
And I think the same thing is really true of living these ways out. It's really uncomfortable, but it's so good. It's so good. I'm learning stuff in this, on this trajectory that I would have never learned if I was always protecting myself. But, I kind of have this love-hate relationship with it. And I think that the Beatitudes, why they're so important. Jesus said these things first. It's kind of like, all right, here we go. This is really contrary to really everything you guys had been doing. That's why I think they really apply still today, because I think even though we know a lot, we have the Bible, we've learned a lot, we keep learning a lot, it's just, God knows our pull towards wanting it easier, wanting it more protected, wanting it safer, wanting it on our terms. And I think that's why he kind of keeps moving and reminding us that, yeah, I know you guys want it that way, but it's better. It's better this way.
Right. Well, one of the things that another thing that I appreciate about you, Kathy, is that you're not a self promoter. So I'm happy to be the one to
I
plug
suck at marketing.
plug this book. Well, I was trying to put it nicely. No, I'm kidding.
No, it's true. I'm bad
But
at it.
I'm curious. What has been what has been the feedback or reaction? Because your book's been out for a while now.
I think like 6 months, seven
Yeah,
months.
yeah. People in your community at the refuge, have you heard from folks out there who are reading it?
Oh yeah, that's been the best part. That's made it all worth it.
Yeah,
Because I think it's just stirred up. I don't know. It's maybe given language. See, that's why I don't mind some terminology, and I don't disagree with you. That sometimes we need something that kind of pulls it together and says maybe what we might know or struggle with or wonder about, and then it kind of gives them language to it. So I think that part's been helpful. Most people will say it's really hard. That's the piece.
yeah,
Like, it's not easy. It's not an easy read. They're not easy thoughts. And I'm always like, I know. I feel it too. I feel the same tension.
yeah,
But my most favorite part is just when I've gotten and continue to have conversations with just people that go, oh my gosh, that I feel so much less alone. And more than anything, we want to try this somehow. We want to try and live that out more intentionally in some little shape or form, because I think churches are all different shapes and forms. And we kind of have sort of hijacked that word and sort of made church, you have to have these elements, but there's lots of people being the church. And I think those are the people that are kind of drawn to Down We Go. It's, I don't say anything in there that's new. It's just, it kind of pulls it together, I think.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it kind of points to that the Beatitudes really resonate with people. And we don't get taught them. I know I didn't. I never knew much about the Beatitudes till I was in recovery, because in the 12 steps and in kind of recovery healing circles, the Beatitudes are a guiding text. And so it's really interesting that in all my Christian experience, it's not that I hadn't ever heard them or read them, but they weren't talked about, or
Right.
sort of, what does it really mean to live them out? What does it really mean to be spiritually poor, to mourn, to be meek, to hunger and thirst for justice and righteousness? Those kinds of things weren't really taught to me until, 8 years ago.
Right. Wow. Well, cool. I really appreciate getting the chance to chat on Twitter and now via Skype. And
This is technology. We're in the year
that's right.
2011, I guess.
So I hope that you have a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year. And I'm sure we'll be talking again.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Thanks for all you do. That was fun. That was a fun experiment. I like experiments.
Yeah, me too.